welcome back. It's Laura at Hyperstamper, and I'm really happy to show you today's antique junk journal that I just finished. It's a fairy themed journal, and it is an antique book here that had a plain navy cover, so I added this vintage crochet and vintage fabric here, navy, and it is the focal point here, this beautiful plate from this vintage 1970s. So it is over 50 years old. The plates of all of Cecily Mary Barker, a famous illustrator, especially for her fairy illustrations. I'm just really hyped about this one. I picked out all my vintage beads that match the little fairy girl here, the slow fairy, and some vintage chain here as well with the same colors. And I just love the blueberries and the butterfly fairy wings. It's absolutely magical. So everything in here is antique and vintage fairy themed ephemera pages. So every single page in here is fairy themed. And then I've got lots of inserts and wonderful treasures for you before I put it in my Etsy shop, which is hyperstamper.etsy.com. And let me just take you on a journey of this beautiful, special fairy journal. So inside here, I've got this wonderful little poem here, Love the Fairy. And there's a little waterfall here, and that is from the 1800s. This here is just some French buttons, and I think they're collar buttons, and they are definitely antique. And I love the title there. So really special, but I thought they looked like little fairy buttons, and I've been saving them for something special, and I think this is it. And then I have just a little vintage stamp here with flowers. That also reminds me of a fairy garden. Here is a little fairy down here on this children's book page. That's sweet, playing with the bunny. And then I've got this gorgeous vintage embroidery, hand embroidery here, just because it's floral and a hidden journaling spot under there. Here is another little fairy page. It's a little fairy that he's holding in his hands there. And a little story above. And this is not fairy, but it is part of a fairy story. And it's the queen, and she's off to the castle in search of her fairy. And then over here, just some vintage paper. And then this I found in a 1940s magazine. Look at this, for Belle's Seasoning, and it's got the little fairy there in the advertisement. So that's been in my fairy folder for a very long time. This one here, down here it says, Jean was so happy with the fairy doll Jim brought home for her. So she's got a little fairy doll here. I just think that's absolutely adorable. And that's from the 1940s as well. Made a little pocket here. And I put some antique paper on the back, and it's just called The Fairies Circus from June 24. That's from the 1930s. This here is a very special plate from the early 1900s. And it says down here, a fairy story in the telling, a secret. And it's just absolutely as sweet as can be. Isn't that lovely? It's a really special one. And then if here's another little winter fairy, Jack Frost. I see him come up a lot. A little cluster here I made. And then this is really sweet from the 1920s. Look at this with all the little elves here. And then on the other side, we've got all kinds of little mushrooms and elf people. And I just thought that was in the same family as our fairies. And this is just an old book cover, and I just loved it because of its aging. And so that is a bookmark. And look at this gorgeous illustration here. It is absolutely stunning, and that's a Dorothy Hope Smith illustration. And you've got the little poem up here, but that is really beautiful. Just some vintage paper there, and a little Pegasus flying horse down here. And look at this. One of the most famous fairies is Ariel's, the Fairy Ariel by William Shakespeare. Isn't that beautiful? And then we've got another little elf down here. We've got the fairy who was at the toy party. Isn't that fun? And then we've got the elves also here and here. And then this is a beautiful little piece here. And this is from the early 1900s. Look at this, the little fairy up here, and the woman and the little elf with his lantern. Sorry, there we go. Isn't that so precious? And actually, I forgot that I am actually making this into a little booklet, so that will be a finished little mini booklet that's going to go in that pocket. Sorry, I was trying to get this done in time to get it up tonight. Here's another little fairy up here, and the story that goes with that one, all the little people. And look at this gorgeous one from this one is from 1940s. The My Book House series and fairy halls, and look at these beautiful illustrations here with all the different fairies. So precious. And then here's another one from another book, Storyteller Poems, and we've got the little fairies down here with the spider web, little boy fairy down there. Oh, just awesome, awesome, awesome. Journaling space here. Now this here is just a 1904 plate that I thought looked like a place where fairies would live. It's beautiful, 120 years old, and you can journal on there or just enjoy it, make up your own stories. And then this here as well, it's got a dragon here, so just more hoofs down here, just more magical things. So I thought that would have a happy home here. I've got a vintage Chantilly lace here. And this one here from the early 1900s is just beautiful. I've used this one before because I've had quite a few of these school books, the first readers. And it's got the fairy kissing the bunny there. I see that story come up a lot, gray and white. I just put a beautiful white feather here from my garden. And I put this little vintage card in here just because it's a flower, and I know fairies like to spend lots of time in flowers, and I thought it matched the flowers on this page. So where we have another illustration. Isn't that Thumbelisa? Little fairies and the flowers there. Another fairy image down here, another one here. These are all vintage and antique pages. And then I chose these pressed flower petals because they looked to me like fairy wings. Aren't they beautiful? So you can put them anywhere you want, do anything you like with those. And then this is another gorgeous, this is from the 1800s, and it's the fringed gentian. Look at this beautiful fairy there. It is, oh, it's just hauntingly beautiful. This is around the fairy ring. We've got a little fairy here and the moon and stars, and we've got a little line of fairies down here. Fabulous. Now this is called Berries, but it's actually the story about a little poem about fairies. So you can see it here. Be off, says the fairy. And then it continues on the back here. And I really liked that. And then this wonderful here, fairies, the piper. And look at, isn't that a beautiful illustration from Ethel Burgess? Just lovely. Here's another little fairy at the fireplace here. And then this came from the book called Enchanted Lands from the 20s. And we've got the leprechaun here running from the fairies here. And then here are more fairies here talking to the grasshopper. Can you believe I have this much fairy ephemera? Isn't that great? And there's the rest of that fringed Genetian. Just a beautiful illustration that's on the back side of that page. Vintage paper here. And then look at this gorgeous, gorgeous illustration here. Isn't that spectacular? Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Another one here. Little fairy here. Here's something I haven't done in one of my videos. Achoo! I haven't sneezed. It's my first video sneeze. Here's a nice little card. I didn't add paper to it because I just liked it all by itself. We have an elf here talking to the mouse, and then we have some elves here with the frogs. So you can do anything you like with that. Add paper to it, make it into a booklet. And I added this one because it was the Seafretter Cliffs of Land's End, and that just looked to me again like a very magical place, maybe where there'd be mermaids or fairies. So that is in this pocket, and then there is a little poem down here about fairies. And look at this. This is from the book Rosamond. I did make that into a journal, and look at how beautiful it is with the tulip and the butterfly and the fairy. I love it so much, so much. A bunch of little elves here from the Good Little People. Just a fun little thing here with some vintage crochet. And then here's another one from a vintage children's book, A Fairy Went to Marketing. Look at underneath the mushroom. I love it. And this is a gorgeous plate. Look at this one. And I want to say that one is actually from the 40s, I believe. Isn't that stunning? Oh my gosh. And then another one here. This is actually Tom Thumb. But look at the fairies here, all bowed down around Tom Thumb. It is spectacular. Now, I have to have a bird in every journal. So this is an antique bird page here. And I just thought the hummingbird was the bird that reminded me most of fairies, the way they flutter their wings. And this is the end page of an antique book, and I've got a little fairy up here in the corner, and I just love the bright, bright color orange there. So I hope you love it as much as I loved making it. It's really special, and you can find that in my Etsy store, hyperstamper.etsy.com, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you soon.